The one attachment that traps you after death, it's not what you think. There's a fire not too far away, which reminds you that it could come in our direction someday. The question is, are you ready? We have this tendency to block out the fact that because bad things can happen in the world to other people, it means that bad things can happen to us. We block that out. That's complacency, heedlessness, which the Buddha said is the basis for all unskillful qualities. So we have to cultivate heedfulness instead, reminding ourselves that there are dangers. The big danger in life, of course, is that we're going to die, and that's unavoidable. It's going to happen someday. You can avoid it in specific instances, but it's going to get you someday. And the question is, are you ready to go? I was reading a series of biographies one time in French to get the language back. I noticed that, especially with people in politics, as they got older, the challenges against them got stronger and stronger. You'd think that people would let up, seeing that these people were old and weak, but that's when the challenges got really savage. The same thing happens at death. You're weak. The body is malfunctioning. And then on top of that, you're going to die. There's the challenge. You can't just give up and go. You're going to be making choices. Those choices will determine your future course, and they'll be determined by your state of mind. You want to make sure that your state of mind is as good as possible. This is why we meditate, so that no matter how bad things get in the body, no matter how bad things get in the world, we can still be strong in mind. We can maintain our mindfulness. We can still keep our wits about us. A lot of people, when they die, end up choosing places to go that no one in their right mind would want to go. But then again, when you die, you're very rarely in your right mind. To put yourself in your right mind, you have to prepare. The Buddha says there are 4 reasons that fear comes up at death. Fear of losing your body, fear of losing human sensual pleasures, fear that the bad things you've done in life will lead to punishment in the next life, and the fear that comes from not knowing the true Dhamma. The people who have this last fear wouldn't necessarily express it in those terms. What it means is they have no idea for sure what's going to happen at death. They have no proof that there is such a thing as the deathless. So there's a big gaping hole in their awareness, a big blank, and it's scary. So we try to prepare for these kinds of fear through our meditation, like fear of losing the body. It's one of the reasons why we do body contemplation. You go through the body part by part by part and you ask yourself, which part is really worth holding on to? Which one is really worth coming back to? Taken apart like that, there's nothing with any appeal. We do this so that we're not attracted to the idea of coming back to any body. What usually happens is that you realize you can't stay in this body at the point of death, and the opportunity comes to go to another one. Many people just jump. In some cases, it's simply the opportunity to have any body at all, and you go for that. In other cases, you might have a vision of a very attractive body, either one that you would be able to take on yourself, or the body of someone you might get as a partner in that particular world. But just because your body looks good by whatever standards you measure good-looking bodies, doesn't mean that it's going to be healthy, doesn't mean that life is going to be a good life. And just because someone else is attractive doesn't mean that they're going to be good people to live with. There are a lot of really beautiful people who live miserable lives. Their beauty becomes a curse. So you have to think about that. Again, this is why we contemplate the body. Get used to taking off the skin in your mind and taking the different organs out and placing them on the ground, so that when the time comes to die, that will be a very quick reaction to any beautiful body that appears to your mind. If a heavenly body comes, you can ask yourself, what? A deva body may not have the parts of a human body, but devas tend to get complacent. Can you imagine what life would be like in one of the heavens, where as soon as you think of wanting something, it appears? You can imagine how you could become spoiled, and when you fall from there, you fall hard. But if, in your meditation, you can develop any of the formless states, staying with a sense of infinite space, a sense of infinite consciousness, nothingness, you don't feel so threatened when you're being pushed out of this body. You know that the mind has good places to go that don't require having a body. It can be okay about the fact that the body is deteriorating. Ajahn Fuang had a student who, one night as she was meditating, had a voice appear in her meditation saying, "You're going to die tonight." She told herself, "Well, if I'm going to die, I might as well die meditating." So she continued to meditate. She said it was as if her body had turned into a house on fire. No matter which room you went into, you couldn't stay because it was all on fire. Then she remembered space. So she focused on the space element, and she didn't feel threatened by the fire in the house at all. Then, when she later came back to the body, everything had settled back down to normal, and she learned an important lesson. If you can access space in your meditation, you don't feel so threatened when the body pushes you out, and you're less likely to make quick and unwise judgments. You're more willing to take a little bit of time and be a little bit more picky about where you go. That can help overcome at least some of your fear of losing the body. As for the fear of losing sensual pleasures, the Buddha has you reflect that there are better sensual pleasures than just the human, and it is possible to meditate as a deva. There's a great story in the canon where a person who dies gets reborn as a deva. He meets up with another deva. It turns out that they were friends in their human lives, and they used to chant together. The other deva says, "Let's chant some more." And so they do. That leads to more Dhamma practice, which protects you from the usual problem in the heavenly realms, getting complacent. We have the same problem in the human realm. You get comfortable, you have a nice hut, a nice house, you feel secure, and you tend to get lazy. When you become a deva and you have a deva palace, there's an even greater tendency to get lazy. So you want to be clear on the fact that wherever you go, you want to practice, you want the opportunity to practice, and you want to take advantage of it, which is why it's good to foster the kinds of delight we talked about the other day. Delight in the Dhamma, delight in abandoning, delight in developing. You want that to become second nature. If you can develop the pleasure and rapture that come from concentration, you provide yourself with an alternative to sensuality. You don't feel so pulled to go for sensual pleasures of any kind. Otherwise, you get easily trapped. Ajahn Mun talks about remembering that he'd been reborn as a dog for 500 lifetimes in a row. It's hard to imagine him as a dog, but he said it happened. And if it's happened to him, it's probably happened to you. As he said, why was that? It was because he got satisfied with the sensual pleasures of dogs. So be careful about sensuality. This fascination we have with thinking about sex and food and all the other pleasures of the senses can appear as you die, and it can pull you down. So remember, there is this alternative. Develop this alternative and develop a taste for it. The alternative offered by the pleasure and rapture of concentration, the pleasure of form, or the pleasure of the formless. That way, you won't feel so desperate and threatened when you die. As for fear of being punished sometimes, as you get close to death, you start thinking about the things you did. Times when, as the Buddha would put it, you were cruel. Times when you didn't give protection to people who were in danger. It may happen that a bad world appears to you, the worst thing that can happen at that time is that you'd say, "Gee, I did all this good in my life and I'm going down to a bad place. The Buddha must have been wrong. Right view was probably wrong." That would really pull you down. But if you remind yourself that you haven't done any of the things that would automatically require that you go down to a lower realm, you do have some goodness to you, and you maintain right view, that can close off the paths to those lower realms. So remember how important right view is. Even if you've done bad things in this life, they don't necessarily pull you down. It's the attitude that rejects right view that pulls you down. So have strong conviction that your actions, your good actions, really do have power, and that you can depend on the memory of those actions. Finally, knowing the true Dhamma. That requires that you've had at least a glimpse of the deathless, so that you know there is something in the mind that's outside of space and time. Death goes only as far as space and time. There's something in the mind that death can't touch. When you've seen that, as the Buddha says, there's no fear about where you're going to go after death. There may be fear of the pain that comes with death, or of the fact that your life will be interrupted. But then, that's the nature of life. It always gets interrupted. Think about people living in a war zone right now. Whatever plans they had for their lives and their families just got chopped off. And that's the nature of life in general. The end of life is not a nice closure, where everybody gathers around and talks about how much they love you, and all the projects you had planned come to completion. The nature of life is that things get chopped off, they get interrupted, so you've got to be prepared. You may say, well, maybe not this time around. Maybe next time I'll be able to complete what I wanted to do. But the only real completion that comes in this world is when you gain awakening. Everything else is just a world of loose ends, interrupted lives. So do your best while you have this opportunity to practice, while things are comfortable. Don't be heedless. You can prepare for death so that you're not afraid of it. When you're not afraid of it, then you will be in your right mind as you die, and you'll be in a much better position to make wise choices. Practicing meditation to perform at death. There's a passage where the Buddha's giving advice on how to counsel someone who's dying. The advice assumes that the person has some level of attainment in meditation, but still, it's good advice for everybody, and good advice to keep in mind for yourself, in case you don't have anybody hovering around, giving you advice when you die. The first thing the Buddha recommended is to ask the person, are you worried about your family? If the person says yes, you have to remind the person, you're dying. Now there's nothing you can do for them. Otherwise, what happens when you die, as the Buddha said, is that you latch on to a craving, and that takes you on to the next life, to the next body. The craving may not necessarily be for another body, but it may be for a certain situation or a certain issue you're concerned about. If you're concerned about your family, you get reborn in your family. You can imagine becoming the child of your niece or nephew. Or maybe nobody in the family is going to have any kids, and you become their dog. You're very protective, but still you're a dog. So you've got to cut off all thoughts of your family. They have their karma. You have your karma, and you don't want to be hovering around them. I knew a woman in Thailand who had 2 sons. Her husband had left her after the second son was born, and he just disappeared. So she had to raise the 2 sons herself. The first son was bright, personable, athletic, good-looking. The second son was none of those. The mother really showed a lot of favoritism with the first son. Well, it was the first son who died. He hopped on his motorcycle one day to pick up some stuff at the store, and within a few minutes, word came back that he had been run over. After a week or so, she came to see me. and said she had a sense that he was still around the house, leaving little signs. For instance, if something good was going to happen that day, there'd be a little dollop of clay left in her drawer. If something bad was going to happen, a little rock, she wanted him to stay there. There's a belief in Thailand that as long as the body is not cremated, the spirit will hang around. Once it's cremated, then the spirit has no locus, and so it moves on. So she wanted to have the body stored away until she died. I had to talk to her and say, "Look, you're keeping him around the house. It's a miserable life being a spirit, hovering around a house. No matter how much you may love your family, let him go." So she finally had the body cremated, and sure enough, things at the house quieted down. So you don't want to be hovering around your family. You've got to cut off thoughts of your family. If you're not on good terms with your family, cut off thoughts of revenge around your family, because those too will pull you back, thinking about how somebody in your family wronged you. You don't want that to be the craving that determines where you're going to be reborn. The next step is to ask the person, are you afraid of missing human sensual pleasures? If the person says yes, you can remind the person of the drawbacks of human sensual pleasures. One way of doing that is to remind the person that there are better pleasures in higher levels of heaven. But then, of course, as you go up the levels of heaven, the sensual pleasures there have their drawbacks too. This is something else that pulls us back. There's a certain pleasure you had in this lifetime. You miss it, and you want to have it again. If the prospect suddenly appears to you as you're dying, that you could have that pleasure again, or maybe something better, something nicer, you go for it. You sign the contract without looking at the fine print. Part of the fine print, of course, is that you're going to get a body. And if it's a human body, it's got all the drawbacks of a human body. This is why we have that chant on the 32 parts of the body. You're going to get a body with these parts. And each of the parts has its diseases. That's one of the contemplations the Buddha has you focus on while you're sick, just in case you happen to die of the illness. Remind yourself, this illness you have is not a chance thing. It's been waiting for you. Every part of the body has a disease waiting for you. Not just one disease, many diseases. In fact, as Ajahn Fun interprets the passage, the different parts of the body are diseases. Think about it. Each little cell is programmed to grow, and it's the other cells around it that get it to stop. Otherwise, if the cell just grew and grew and grew, it would become a cancer and kill you. If each little part had its way, it would take over. It would malfunction. So the parts are just waiting to malfunction. We're lucky that we get the body to function at all. So if you go for human sensual pleasures, this is what you're going to be stuck with. A body that's ready to grow ill. A body that's going to age. As the passage in the canon says, aging drops on you, as if out of nowhere. The body you used to know is not there anymore. It's been replaced by something else. And it doesn't ask permission. When you latch onto the body, it's not the case that the body has agreed that it's going to do what you want. It feels no obligation to you, no matter how well you take care of it. When I first came back to the States, I got a phone call once from a guy who'd been a master of martial arts. He'd been able to control his body until it was able to do all kinds of things, smash through all kinds of stuff. But now, it had turned on him and fallen ill, and he felt betrayed. He'd taken such good care of it. He had trained it so well. But this is what the body does. It feels no sense of obligation at all. Each part is ready to get diseased. And once you have a body, of course, It's going to open you to all kinds of accidents. You can't guarantee that you're going to have a healthy body all the time, or even a sound body, or a complete one. This is just part of the fine print of signing on to sensual pleasure. Another, of course, is that the position of being in slavery to sensual pleasures is not a really good place to be. It's one of the reasons why the Buddha has you think about all the drawbacks of sensuality. One of his images that's pretty vivid, in relation to what we see around here at the monastery, is when a raptor gets a piece of meat, it has to fly away to make sure other raptors don't get it. If they attack it, sometimes it has to let go. Otherwise, they'll kill it. That, the Buddha said, is sensuality. Our sensual pleasures are also like a bead of honey on the blade of a very sharp knife. To enjoy that little bit of honey, you have to be extremely careful. There are a lot of pleasures in the world you can enjoy only in a very dangerous situation. When you get them, other people want them too. So the Buddha has you reflect on the drawbacks of the body and the drawbacks of sensuality, so that your mind doesn't go flowing over into human rebirth again. But even diva sensual pleasures have their drawbacks. It is possible on some levels of the deva realms to practice the Dhamma, but it's so easy to get carried away with the bliss. You get these pleasures you never had before, and part of the mind says, well, let me enjoy them for a while and then I'll practice. But then you forget. So, it's good to reflect on these drawbacks, to keep the mind from just grabbing at whatever, and to get it to look for something better. This is why we practice for the dispassion, to keep in mind the fact that there is something better than these things. There are cases where people gain awakening at the moment of death. Reflect on the fact that even devas suffer from self-identity, identifying with the aggregates one way or another, either identifying with the aggregates themselves or feeling that they are someone who possesses these aggregates, wants to use them as tools, or they're in the aggregates, or the aggregates are in them. Even a state of infinite consciousness, you can develop a sense of self around that, a sense of infinite space. You can develop a self around that, and a very strong sense of pride. One of my favorite stories about monks meditating and gaining visions is of one monk who was meditating out in the forest. As he was sitting and meditating, devas would come past and would stop and bow down to him. He thought to himself, gee, this is pretty cool, being a meditating monk. Even devas bow down to you. All of a sudden, a foot appeared out of the sky and kicked him in the head, and a voice said, space devas can bow down if they want to, and if not, if they don't. So in that case, the monk had a problem with pride. But you can imagine the space devas had a problem with pride too. So when you reflect on the dangers of pride and the dangers of self-identification, you want to be in a position where you say, I don't have to go to any of these places. I don't have to latch on to any of these things. Now, what that means, of course, is that you have to have been practicing. It's one of the reasons why we call it practicing meditation, because when death comes, you're going to have to perform, and you don't want to suddenly suffer from performance anxiety. You want to know what you're doing. You have to be mindful, you have to be alert, and you have to be ardent, all the way to the end, even as the body is falling apart. So as you're sitting here meditating and finding yourself giving in to a little pain here, a little pain there, or saying, I'm tired tonight, remind yourself, when the day comes to perform, it's going to be a lot more difficult than this. So learn to practice with pain. Learn to practice with the different hindrances, sensual desire, ill will, all the way down the line, so that when the time comes to perform, you'll have mastered the skills. Now, there are cases, as they say, where people suddenly pull themselves together at the moment of death, but you make it a lot more likely that you'll be able to do that if you keep practicing. Practice in spite of pain, or you might say, practice because of pain, practice because of tiredness, practice because of the heat outside in the summer and the cold in the winter, because you want to be able to master these things.